Imagine the first human being who saw lightning tear across the darkness, who heard thunder that shook the earth, who stood before the endless ocean and asked, "What is all this?" Religion answered, "God created it." Myths answered, "The gods are fighting." But philosophy asked something different. Without stories, what does reason say? And in that moment, philosophy was born, not from fear, not from blind faith, but from wonder. Plato said, "Philosophy begins in wonder." And that's true. The day we stop being amazed is the day we stop thinking. We breathe, but we don't ask, "What is breathe?" We love, but we don't ask, "What is love?" We demand justice, but we don't ask, "What is justice?" Philosophy breaks these habits. It shakes us awake. It is not a comfortable answer. It is an uncomfortable question. It is not a safe building. It is a restless journey. Sometimes it comforts you, sometimes it disturbs you, but it always transforms you. If science tells us how things work, philosophy asks, why do they exist at all? And deeper still, what does it mean to exist? The word philosophy means love of wisdom, but love of wisdom is not passive, it is active questioning. Philosophical questions fall into three great categories. What is real? Is the world just matter? Does God exist? What is a human being? How do we know? Does knowledge come from experience? From reason? What is the difference between belief and truth? What is right? What is good? What is evil? Are we free or are we controlled? Philosophy is not a book, it is a way of thinking. Let's see how the great thinkers understood philosophy. Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. For him, philosophy meant questioning your own life. Plato, philosophy begins when you ask, "What is this world really?" Aristotle, all men by nature desire to know. Philosophy is the disciplined pursuit of knowledge. Descartes, "I think, therefore I am." Philosophy begins with doubt and rebuilds certainty. Kant, "Dare to know." Philosophy is intellectual courage. Now let's enter the great fields of philosophy. Metaphysics, the philosophy of being. Metaphysics asks, what is reality? Is the world nothing but matter? Or does meaning lie behind it? What is the soul? Is there a God? Is time real or a human invention? It questions existence itself. Metaphysics is the silent question inscribed upon the forehead of the universe, one that humanity has actively tried to read for centuries. It does not merely catalog things, it descends into the depth of being and asks what is truly means to be. Is reality only what the senses can touch? Or is there a hidden layer where the roots of meaning are embedded? Are space and time independent realities? Are frameworks shaped by the mind? Is causation an external bond in the world or an order imposed by our understanding? Metaphysics turns its gaze away from surface noise to listen to the quiet pulse of existence. It lifts us from the uncomfortable bed of certainty and casts us into the boundless field of questioning. Here, the human being is no longer a spectator of the cosmos, but becomes part of the very mystery he seeks to solve. Plato said, "Our world is nothing but a shadow, and true reality lies in the forms." Aristotle replied that reality resides in this world, in the union of matter and form. Modern science suggests that reality may be ambiguous, like quantum waves. Metaphysics humbles us. Epistemology, the theory of knowledge. Epistemology asks, how do we know that we know? Does knowledge arise from the senses, from reason, or from experience? It is the moment when the mind turns upon itself and dare to question its own foundations. Do we truly know what we claim to know? Or do we merely believe? Where does certainty rest? On perception, on logic, or on lived experience? Epistemology draws the subtle line between knowledge and opinion. It subjects very claim to the examination. Is truth what can be proven or what cannot be doubted? It educates us that the mind is not a warehouse of information, but a workshop of critical inquiry. Every certainty demands an argument. Every argument demands scrutiny. René Descartes began with radical doubt. I think, therefore I am. David Hume argued that we perceive only impressions and experiences. Immanuel Kant maintained that the mind itself shapes reality. Epistemology reveals that knowledge can be both power and illusion. Ethics, the philosophy of the good. What is good? What is evil? How ought we to live? Here, philosophy becomes most practical. Is lying ever justified? Is happiness the ultimate aim of life? Ethics is the doorway where a person stands before their own conscience and asks, what should I do? It is not a simple dictionary of good and bad, but a deep examination of intention, action, and consequence. Is virtue what benefits us or what remains faithful to principle, even at a cost? Is value determined by the individual or by society, by emotion or by reason? Ethics reminds us that freedom without responsibility is merely selfishness. Intention, integrity, and accountability are weighed on the same scale. It teaches that justice matters more than power and character more than success. Here, by mastering desire, human beings give meaning to their existence. Aristotle proposed the golden mean, the path of moderation. Immanuel Kant insisted that morality requires principle. Friedrich Nietzsche challenged morality as a weapon of the weak. Ethics hold up a mirror. We wish to be good, yet often remain slaves to convenience. Political philosophy, the philosophy of power and the state. What is the state? What should it be? Is democracy better than dictatorship? What is power? And who should possess it? How free should the individual be? Political philosophy is the mirror in which power is forced to examine its own face. It is not merely about governments or laws, but about the legitimacy of authority and the limits of obedience. Does power arise from the will of the people or from sheer force? What is justice? How far can equality go? Where does freedom end? The state is not only a structure of order, but a living expression of values. Here, theory becomes law, and law shapes human destiny. Power without accountability becomes tyranny. Freedom without responsibility descends into chaos. Political philosophy seeks the balance where individual dignity and collective good complete rather than negate one another. Plato envisioned the philosopher king. Thomas Hobbes saw humans as naturally conflict driven and demanded a strong state. John Locke defended liberty as a fundamental right. Rousseau argued for the social contract. Politics is not merely about power, it is an ethical question. Logic, the discipline of reason. Aristotle laid the foundation of syllogistic reasoning. Bertrand Russell developed mathematical logic. Logic is the silent scale upon which the claims of thought are weighed. It asks whether conclusions truly follow from premises or merely arise from verbal cleverness. It trains the mind to examine structure, detect contradiction, and uncover hidden assumptions. Truth depends not only on sincerity of intention, but on correctness of reasoning. Without logic, metaphysical claims become scattered, knowledge collapses, ethics degenerates into slogans, and political theory into propaganda. Logic may appear dry, but it is breadth of thought. Aesthetics, the philosophy of beauty. What is beauty? Why does art move us? Why can a poem transform us? Aesthetics reminds us that the human being is not only rational but also aesthetic. It seeks to understand the resonance that expands the soul. Is beauty merely a sensory impression or a standard emerging from consciousness itself? Is art imitation of reality or its creative interpretation? Beauty is not only in form, but in harmony, proportion, and meaning. The artist does not merely depict a sense but sculpts a language of feeling. Here, pleasure and understanding are intertwined. The eyes see and the mind seeks meaning. Aesthetics is the inquiry into why certain forms change us from within and why some melodies outlive time itself. The unity of all branches. In truth, philosophy is a single river that we divide into different names for the sake of convenience. At times, it flows as the question of being, at times, as the possibility of knowledge, at times, as the struggle between good and evil, at times, as the structure of power and the state, at times, across the dry land of reasoning, and at times within the delicate atmosphere of beauty. Yet, the water is one. If someone imagine that metaphysics is one thing, epistemology another, ethics something separate, they are seeing only a wall, not the whole building. Metaphysics begins by asking, what is a thing? What is existence? What is the structure of reality? Cause, possibility, actuality. These belong to its field, but the question cannot stand alone. The moment we ask what reality is, another question arises immediately. How do we know that this is reality? Here, epistemology enters. If the nature of being is uncertain, the foundation of knowledge will be uncertain as well. If reality is in flux, knowledge too will be provisional. If reality is stable, then knowledge may aspire to stability. Thus, metaphysics and epistemology stand back to back, one describing the structure of being, the other charting the path toward it. The moment we claim knowledge or accept something as true, its consequences appear in our actions. If we come to know that the human being is free, the idea of responsibility emerges. If we believe that everything is determined, moral accountability weakens. In this way, epistemology gives birth to ethics. What we know or claim to know becomes the measure of our good and evil. If reality contains no value, morality reduces to social contract. If reality carries an intrinsic dimension of the good, morality becomes its pursuit. Thus, a theory of being becomes a theory of knowledge, and knowledge becomes action. When ethics moves from the individual to the collective, political philosophy arises. Once we determine what is good, we must also determine how society should be organized. If freedom is our highest value, the state will take one form. If equality is fundamental, it will take another. If power is seen as natural, politics becomes fair. If cooperation is primary, politics become humane. Political philosophy is the collective extension of ethics. The question of individual character, when tied to the lives of millions, transforms into constitution, law, and authority. Yet another force works quietly beneath all of this: logic. If metaphysics is the structure of being, epistemology the foundation of knowledge, ethics the measure of action, and political philosophy the organization of society, then logic is their inner architecture. It educates us how to reason, where contradiction lies, where an argument collapses. Without logic, metaphysical claims scatter, knowledge crumbles, moral principles dissolve into emotional slogans, and political theories degrade into propaganda. Logic may appear dry, but it is the breadth of thought. It compels us to accept the consequences of what we believe. It exposes contradiction and clarifies coherence. And then comes aesthetics, seemingly the softest and the most unnecessary branch, yet in truth the deepest. We do not merely know reality, we feel it. The idea of beauty teaches us why harmony, proportion, and balance touch the heart. When we see simplicity and unity in theory, we call it beautiful. When a political system achieves balance, we call it elegant. When a moral character is harmonious, we perceive dignity. Thus, aesthetics is not confined to art. It colors our metaphysics, shapes our epistemology, and refines our ethics. We are more inclined to believe in a universe that appears coherent and beautiful than in one that seems chaotic and fragmented. In reality, all these branches form a circle. Metaphysics sketches reality, epistemology provides the method of understanding it, ethics transforms understanding into action, political philosophy organizes that action collectively. Logic preserves the integrity of the whole process. Aesthetics infuses it with meaning and sensibility. If one branch weakens, the others are affected. A shallow concept of being limits knowledge. Weak knowledge blurs morality. Blurred morality hardens politics into oppression. Without logic, everything collapses into confusion. Without aesthetics, life loses its soul. These dimensions operate within the human being in the same order. First, we determine what the world is, then, how we know it, then, what we ought to do, then, how we ought to live together, then, how we ought to think, and finally, how we ought to feel. Thought, knowledge, action, community, reasoning, and emotion. These are not separate realms, but different aspects of a single human experience. The branches of philosophy are not separate rooms, but different doors of the same house. Open any one of them, and eventually you will arrive at the same center, where question and answer begin to merge. Beingness, knowledge, value, power, reason, and beauty together form the complete map of human consciousness. Philosophy is the art of reading that map. Philosophy is disciplined, critical, and profound reflection upon reality, knowledge, morality, and meaning. Why philosophy matters in real life. Philosophy will not help you pass an exam. It will change how you see the world. It gives you moral clarity, self knowledge, intellectual freedom. Socrates said, "Know thyself." Philosophy exposes your assumptions, it frees you from the crowd. What philosophy does to you? Philosophy first breaks you, then rebuilds you. It challenges your beliefs, then deepens them. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Philosophy gives you the why, and that is power. Philosophy is not a destination, it is a path, not an answer, but a question, not a finished building, but a storm that destroys old structures and reveals new horizons.